Welcome to CIC number 7. It's late March and a very late coming springtime. In New York, it's still pretty cold in the studio. Last week, I went to the press briefing at the Jewish Museum for their new show, and I'll read the title of the press release. First U.S. museum exhibition focused on Paul Klee's rarely seen work opens at the Jewish Museum this March. Paul Klee, Other Possible Worlds, reveals the artist's response to the rise of fascism in 1930s Europe during the final decade of his life. And this is the show that features a suffering artist. And indeed, he suffered his reputation at the hands of the Nazis, and the last room of the exhibition features the final years of his suffering after he was diagnosed with scleroderma in 1936. In 1940, he died. Scleroderma is a disease that it's an autoimmune disease that affects the connective tissue in the body. More vividly, it's described as a disease that dries out your mucous membranes. And in the final moments of his life, the final years, it was even hard for him to swallow. And it must have been a lingering, horrible death. And the theme of the suffering artist is suffices the exhibition. Even though the exhibition spans his entire life in the 5 or so galleries that ring the fourth floor, from his first etchings that he made in 1902, 1903, to his final works in the sanatorium just right before he died. And indeed, it's all very touching. In the penultimate room feature many of his drawings that he made, caricatures it's drawings that reflected his oppressive ambience of a society that is kind of going off the rails. It reminded me of Daumier's drawings. The characteristic handwork there was remarkable to me. It was in contrast to the very first etchings, where you see a very sure hand. And I'm not describing an artist that is degenerating. It's more or less, he had a full range of expressions and mediums that he used. And he was quite capricious, not capricious, wrong word. He used art media with great felicity and facility, but he had a hand that was a range in the way he applied the line, the way he drew. That range he used for different modes, and they were interchangeable. I mean, he was able to tap in to these different modes. So these drawings in the penultimate room are striking to me, because in contrast to striking a line decisively, which he's certainly able to do, and many of his paintings and drawings exhibit this. In these drawings, it's done with a very, like say 20 strokes to do one line. And it's, I wonder why he chose that and stayed in that mode to make a number of these drawings that reflected on the world around him as it was kind of going crazy. Maybe it's appropriate that way. But as I was looking at the show, I couldn't help but think that there was a lot of joy that was in his life, not conventionally expressed. I mean, just in his person, it seemed to me, researching his biography and learning more about him, He was just basically unconventional without any spite. There's a story when he was a kid. Um, I assume it was early high school, where he had to pass a test that matriculated him to the next level, and he made the grade, but only by a couple of points. And he wrote, well, as he commented to his parents, I assume at the time, it takes a lot of skill to achieve the exact minimum. It's not without hazard, which shows us his sense of humor and that he was comfortable in himself, that he liked what he was doing, and he was going to pursue it regardless of convention. He marched to his own drummer, and he was quite happy to do it. And he didn't do it in defiance of anybody or anything. He was raised by musicians, his father and mother, and they were accomplished each in their own way. And Klee played the violin as well, and was at an early age, and I think the age 11 or something like that, he was invited to play concerts in the town he grew up in. Later on, as a young adult, or teenager, he wrote reviews on plays and theater reviews. He also had a facility for language and for writing and for poetry, and it was a kind of alternate career path that he entertained. But in a way, maybe he loved poetry too much to actually go down that path. Maybe he had too much respect for it. It's something that I can relate to. But you can see it coming out in the way he titled his work, and the way he wrote his biography, the way his intelligence was there, and everyone can see it. When you look at Klee's mediums, the way he mixed and matched a bewildering variety of watercolor, tempera, oils, on plaster infused gauze and airplane linen. Airplane linen, interestingly, was material that he accessed while he was conscripted into the military in World War One. He was in not frontline, but um, secondary line troops, air support, basically. I've heard elsewhere that it was more or less a clerical job. He wasn't actually painting the camouflage, even though painting the linen that was stretched over the aircraft of those days was done. But he had access to airplane linen, which was quite interesting, that he had basically, I suspect, hoarded and used throughout. And he painted while he was in the military as well, which is quite interesting. He was able to not live in the barracks, but lived in his own room, which he painted on his off hours, and produced a number of works during those years. But the way he fabricated his work, it's quite something to behold.
Lothar Schreier, who from 1921 to 1924 served as head of the workshop for stagecraft at the Bauhaus in Weimar, recalled the vivid impression Klee's studio there made on him. Here I was again in the magic kitchen. Certainly our entire Bauhaus in Weimar was a laboratory, but this was truly the magic kitchen. There was a strong scent of an agreeable mixture of coffee, tobacco, glue, oil paint, fine French varnishes, lacquer, solvents, and mysterious mixtures. Near the wash basin, lined up in a row on various small tables, were boxes of paints, palettes, tubes, little pots of color, glue mixtures, gesso mixtures, and mysterious pastes, spirit stoves, long and short brushes with thick and thin bristles or hairs, spatulas of all kinds, burins, etching needles, drawing pins, small knives, tweezers, and in addition, strips of linen, canvas, Japan and wove papers, smooth cardboard, inks, small pieces of canvas, grounded and ungrounded, everything seemingly random, yet within reach in the order which the pictures required them.
And that kind of independence and felicity, this He didn't subscribe to ideology. He was quite skeptical of being roped into different things. He was participant in the Bavarian Revolution, part of the Communist Party, I assume, but for a very short time, and sort of didn't keep that activity going. What we're talking about is a very independent mind, and a mind that took in all kinds of perspectives, all kinds of approaches, and embodied that in his art making. Which, for some of the works in the show, and there's quite a nice spectrum of paintings in this exhibition, paintings and drawings, and it follows chronologically in the 5 galleries. One piece just shot it out to me. It was a painting made with paste, essentially colored paste. It's a strange piece because it's not your typical multi-layered feat of construction, but it was actually colored paste pushed around and into what resembles a figure. And it was, for me, it was just stopped me in my tracks. And the show has as a centerpiece Angelus Novus, which at the time of the press briefing, the actual piece was still in transit, and it may be there up now. I hope it is. They had a facsimile up, which was not very satisfying. But go to the show, and maybe you can catch a glimpse of the iconic painting that inspired so many people. But certainly he was a happy man. Certainly he smiled. When he was young, he traveled. He went to Italy. The German temperament was infused with appreciation of color, I assume, during those travels. He met the notable artists of modern art history, like Kandinsky or Delaunay or Picasso. But he didn't work within their ranks. He was his own guy, which again underscores his independence and eclecticism, but welcomed within his ranks and beguiled many of them, which was very quite something. And it was something to see, to connect in a way. The first etching is of a figure whose right arm transformed into a wing. And the theme of angels permeated all of his works throughout his life. And that subject of angels can be seen in many of his works in his final year. So yes, this is a show that features an artist that endured persecution and physical suffering. I think there's another Klee that you can see in the works themselves physically. I think it's work that is happy, that is adventurous, that is open. And that is the other Paul Klee that you can see in this exhibition, which I highly recommend. It's a very interesting show.